Hello, everybody. I think we've still got people trickling in, but we will just get a little head start. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Komo Webinar Wednesdays, or welcome back. I know there's a few people who have joined us before. My name's Marley. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Komo's product marketing specialist, and I'm just going to give our lovely Aussie a nice intro. And leave her to intro our wonderful guests. Aussie is our Global Chief of Customer Engagement and Loyalty Partnerships, and she's going to be leading this panel of sorts today. So I'll just be here in the background. If you have any questions throughout, you are welcome to come off mute. You are welcome to send them in the chat box, and I'll alert the speakers that you've asked a question. But there will also be a Q&A session at the end where you're free to ask questions as well. So plenty of time for those things. But Oz, take it away.
Awesome. Okay, today we're discussing metrics and analytics. And this was coming off the back of the first webinar. We put out a poll and this was a topic of choice. So what I've done is invited some friends of mine, and I am so fortunate to say they are also ex-teammates, colleagues, and I couldn't be happier that they have, they have agreed to join us today. So what we'll be covering off is data-driven strategies, metrics in loyalty programs, measuring personalisation, and winning at the point of purchase. Some of the questions that we'll be covering off is how do we actually measure the success of loyalty programs, the approach to developing data-driven strategies, the role that personalisation plays in loyalty, and what does winning at the point of purchase mean, and how can this impact programs. So without further ado, a little bit about myself. How can I miss this? Well, I was fortunate enough to work with Shirley at Unilever. So I do have FMCG experience, and at McCann Group. Also worked with Alex and Julie at Global Red, where we worked on Priceline together, and RMA and Fitness First. And I worked with Lisa Dickson at Optus, who was also in my team. So fortunate I am to have worked with them, and then added fintech at EMX. Okay, so my special guest is Julie Fitzpatrick, CEO of Gravitas, Alex, who is the Director of Loyalty and CRM for Nectar 360 and Sainsbury in London, and Lisa Dickson, who's the Head of Personalisation of Bupa in Melbourne, and Shirley Leung, who is the Global Merchandising Manager for McDonald's in London. Thank you. Over to you, Jules.
All right, thanks, Aussie. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. So it's lovely to be here. Thank you, Aussie, for the introduction. For those that I haven't met, I almost don't want to say this anymore. I've been in loyalty since 1995, so that makes me significantly mature. But I have actually had the pleasure, as Aussie said, of working with Aussie and very closely with Alex in the past. And it's lovely to come together today just to talk about the varying factors and the growth that's happened and we've seen in loyalty and CRM. So when Aussie asked me to speak today, I was kind of thinking about what I think a lot of the burning questions are that come to me. So I thought I would just discuss approaches we're now taking in working with our clients on loyalty and CRM. And that is really starting to hone in on customer value management, which is a overarching strategy that works with CRM and loyalty. Obviously, our approach, which I'm sure is very common for all of you, starts with the customer data and really understanding what is happening today in your customer base and what are the different customer behaviours that you're actually seeing within your base. And then how do you actually work with those customer behaviours to start to differentiate the way you may communicate to them, the way you may service them, the way you may invest in those customers. A key focus we do when we're working with clients, before we've recommended any form of strategy, we really start to try and understand where the value pools and value drivers are within the base. So what I mean by that is all clients know what their revenue was, what their incremental growth was year on year. What they don't often know is where is that growth and movement coming from. So that's looking at new customers coming into the business, it's looking at customers churning out, or customers that are staying with the business but are actually reducing their spend with the business. So what we really start to look at before we recommend anything is a program called IBRO, which is looking at inflow. So how much of your revenue is made up of net new customers coming into your business, how many stayed with you and stayed in the same segment or the same value band with you, how many people grew with you and actually increased their value or moved more into high value groups, and how many people churned out altogether. And what that really helps us understand is, whilst they might have grown 5 or 10% year on year, there may be $200-300 million of movement going through the base. So our focus is very much understanding what's happening with the baseline, what's happening at all the customer value movement levels. So that helps us then build out a customer value segmentation. And that segmentation is not to replace existing segmentation. So it's typically to complement other segmentations that may be having, be had in the business. And it's generally covert, meaning it's not a customer facing type of segmentation. So a lot of you will have loyalty segments, your gold, silver, bronze, etc., which you have to actually publicly have a conversation about with customers. When we're looking at customer value segmentation, it's very much to complement what you're talking about overtly with the customer, but allows you to get into a lot more discrete uses of differentiated offers, treatments, and strategies, and aligning those to what you can afford to invest in those customers. So we all know that not all customers are created equal. However, it's often difficult to drive, communications and personalisation at scale that is actually driving the different nuances to your customer base in which you can actually afford and sustain. So we typically group customers into around about 5 key value bands. And the reason we do that, which is interesting, because in the past you might have 25 different segments or 25 different versions of things, we typically like to group it down to around about 5. So it's a really big enough organising idea for the whole company to wrap their heads around. Because what we want to do is not create loyalty or CRM segmentations that are complicated to explain across the business. We want the frontline call centre people to know that this is a high value customer and this is how they can actually treat them. We want the people in risk management to understand that this is a high value customer and the credit and risk treatments you do with this customer are going to have a long-term impact on their behaviour. We want the marketing teams to be able to do a lot more differentiated offers and get those offers approved and business case through the business, because we know that that's actually going to be aligned to current and long-term future value. When we look at building out these customer value segmentations, the types of data that we look to bring into that are going to be the obvious ones around things like spend history, customer tenure, frequency, category behaviour if you're in retail, spend levels, churn rates, etc. But what we also like to supplement that with is other customer behavioural data, so digital data, NPS data, offer engagement data, and various other things. So it allows us to have a really good colour of those customers and those behaviours. And we do all of that before we've even recommended a strategy to the business, because otherwise we actually don't know what's going on in the business. So once we've actually understood the baseline and where the value movements are, once we've applied a customer value management segmentation, it allows us to drill into where the priority or hotspots actually are and start to get into a fewer, bigger, better approach into building an organising strategy and a communications playbook to drive those behaviours and changes. So it's quite an exciting time in loyalty when you start to bring those strategies in place, because it allows you to get into doing much more like personalisation at scale. And for us to do personalisation at scale, it's very much you need an always-on operating model. You need to, build, run and optimise campaigns. You need to have continuous learning going on all the time. But it allows the organisation to rally around supporting the change management for personalisation at scale, because it's very much locked into the value or the value growth that they can see within their customer base. We're working with a number of clients now where it's interesting because across different sectors, the same methodology applies beautifully, but it allows, my proudest moment would be when the clients are talking about their customer value and they actually all are talking at an organisation-wide level about how they're going to differentiate high value, how they're going to change the experience when someone first joins the business, because they need to deepen the engagement before they start the cross-sell type process. So it's a big learning for organisations to really build an engagement strategy that's aligned to value, but the rewards in that are generally in the first year very, very positive and very value accretive. So it makes business cases for marketers a bit of a dreamboat, because they're actually going up with not just a strategy, but if I can change 10% of this lever that's worth 7.5 incremental dollars, can I please spend XYZ to arrest that change? It changes the conversation at the C-suite or the board very, very quickly. Couple of areas that I think is important to talk about is how to differentiate. So if you have all these insights and you're building a customer strategy to drive behaviour, obviously that behaviour is only going to be driven or changed if you can communicate to those customers. So it is really important that outside of the insights which is shaping the strategy, that you do build out a set of, scalable customer playbooks to start to drive that change, because it can be measured all the way through. And as you're driving the change, we can measure and we can optimize based on performance. And it starts to build a wave of continuous optimization through the business, because the cultural change, as you probably all know, when you're driving this, is not just marketing anymore. It's the whole of organization that needs to get behind being able to drive personalization at scale. And it's shifting the conversation from just being in marketing conversation to being a C-suite conversation. So I've covered a lot of big territories there, but for us, customer value management is what I believe will be the new wave of transformation for CRM and loyalty. And it's not replacing it. It is just deepening the conversation and deepening the data-driven approach to building out a customer-led strategy. So as I discussed, key takeaways that I would like to leave you with is I believe customer value management is the next leap in loyalty and CRM, and it's certainly conversations I'm having now with a lot of C-suite members is what is the next wave, because loyalty and CRM, a lot of loyalty programs have been around for a very long time, and so they need a refresh. A lot of loyalty programs can cost a lot of money if they're not actually driven at a value lens. CVM strategy is not a tactic. It is literally an organising idea in the brain that should be driving broad strategies across the business, and applying a value measure to customers is really key to finding the growth that's hard to find. So key strategic questions I thought I might leave you with to ponder on. There are a lot of questions that we also get is, to reflect on, who are your most valuable customers? Where are you gaining and losing share from those groups? How much are you relying on your best customers? And what you'll often find is there is a really high proportion of your sales coming from a small sector of your customers. Where's your real headroom for growth? That's interesting, because customers are in different stages of their life cycle and in different stages of their engagement with you. So working out where your real headroom is for growth and how much you should invest in those customers to capture that. Other big question is, who is actually costing you money to be your customer? So there's a lot of campaigns that go out that are just going out to a fairly broad group. And in fact, when you actually do the full measurement of that campaign, it can be negative margin areas. How can you differentiate your sales, service and loyalty treatment? So every time we talk about customer value management or customer engagement, it's not just marketing campaigns. It's looking at what are the broader touches that these customers have to your organisation, and service is a key one. Also, who's advocating and who's detracting, and how can you leverage NPS in a more actionable way to start to drill into those hotspots? And the other big question is, what's the true value of your loyalty and CRM programs today, and how can you start to inject more value into those programs over time? So I know I just covered some very broad territories there, but I'm very happy to take a few questions if you would like.
Yeah, well, maybe we can. Oh, cool. Francis was saying that was excellent.
Oh, thank you.
What we'll do is we'll hold the questions if there aren't any more for now, or comments, and move into Alex, as it's a lovely segue into metrics and loyalty programs and how do we measure the success of loyalty programs. So over to you, Alex.
Thanks, Matey. Thanks, Aussie. Great intro, Julie. Thank you very much. So, hi, everyone. Lovely to be with you this evening. It's 20 past 11 in the evening here, so apologies if I look a little bit bleary-eyed, but I will keep you entertained at least for the next 10 minutes or so. So, Aussie asked me to talk about how to measure success in loyalty programs, and she also said I had about 5 to 10 minutes to talk about it. I thought she was kidding. I could probably take all day to talk about this subject. I spent a couple of hours even with my leadership team today thinking about how we were going to track the next 12 months of progress with our program Nectar within Sainsbury's. So instead of getting into the nitty-gritty detail, what I thought I'd do is just think about, well, what would be the key things that I would think about if I was starting a new role? What would be the approach I'd take to be sure that I've got a really confident measurement of the success of the program? I know Julie talked a bit there about the importance of understanding your customers, having a really clear strategy, and then mapping the performance metrics you have against that, and that's absolutely key. And the important thing to say there is, measure what is important to your business, and importantly, measure what you can take tangible action against. Sorry, apologies in advance. Here comes the spoiler alert. There is no set playbook for measuring loyalty per se. There's no silver bullet, but there are a number of tried and tested territories to think about that all ladder up to a really useful suite of insights on performance. And depending on the profile of your business or your organization, each of these will have a differing importance in what defines success. So you might be asking yourself, well, how mature is the business and the program? Are you looking to grow new customers and accept that actually that might cost you a bit to do that? Or are you working to protect your best customers in a relatively mature market? First question I'd really ask is your program designed for retention or acquisition? Loyalty suggests it's all about retention, but I think we all know that that's not always strictly true. Other things to think about are, thinking about the product that you're selling. Is it something of high value with a long consideration period? So you really need to build those long-term emotional connections to secure the sale. Is the business one that needs customers to renew a purchase on a renewal cycle, insurance or mobile maybe? There you probably need to think about creating value beyond the product to differentiate the purchase at renewal time. Or like Sainsbury's, so in my world, low margin business, really high frequency. So loyalty is all about just literally securing the next shop in a way that's really cost effective. So I've got some scenarios and some things to talk about in terms of the territories that I would go about thinking about to measure success. So if we can just ping up the slide, that would be fantastic. So typically, I'll think about measurement in 3 buckets. So firstly, and importantly, KPI. So what are the critical success factors for your program? Secondly, what I call inside-out metrics. So these are business-centric view of performance, the data and metrics produced by the program, what people do and what impact that has on your business. And then finally, the outside-in. So the flip side of that, outside-in, what customers are saying about the program, how they feel, what they say, and what's their emotional connection to your brand. So let's unpick each of those in a little bit more. So KPIs, top 2, 3, 4 things that are really the absolute measures of success for your strategy, your program KPIs. Thinking about me and my role right now, the current strategic drivers I've got are firstly ensuring that we've got a really compelling value proposition for our customers in a very competitive market where customers are undergoing kind of the burden of the cost of living crisis. We want to use Nectar to act as a bit of a lever to add additional value to our customer shopping. And so we're looking to really protect and reward our most important primary customers. So customers who spend more than 50% of their weekly shop with Sainsbury's. And we know that we'll have that right when customers tell us that we offer good value for money and we've got mass participation in the scheme. So first two KPIs are program engagement and customer value perception. Another part of our strategy is transforming the program to be more digital, enable greater degrees of personalisation really cost effectively. So third KPI for me is digitally active customers. And then I've got a fourth KPI and final one on the list, which is continually looking to maintain a positive ROI, or at least neutral ROI on program spend. So do customers think we're good value? Are they engaging with the program? Are we converting customers to our loyalty app? And are we doing it all with at least a neutral ROI? So when it comes to loyalty KPIs, advice here is just ensure that they're declared as part of your corporate plan and really widely understood by the whole business, just as Julie was saying, outside of marketing, really deeply into the whole business. Make sure you're very, very clear on timeframes too, because some of these things that you want to change are pretty slow movers. So value perception is a good example of that. You might want to therefore think about key subsegments, as Julie was talking about, to prioritize so you can demonstrate the movement in smaller groups of customers. All of this clearly providing really great focus, alignment across the whole business rather than just your little team. My program engagement KPI is a formal corporate KPI for Sainsbury. So instead of just having my little team of 50 behind it, I've got 180,000 colleagues, all know that that's a key objective of the business and working towards driving it through. So you've got your KPIs clearly stated, socialised, shared. You've got your North Star, what next? Well, thinking now about those inside-out metrics, so measures that really help you make good decisions to achieve your KPIs. I typically look at these by customer segment, as Julie was saying, and also at the programme level. So thinking about customer metrics, new acquisitions, churn rate, customers in particular tiers. Then you've got transactional metrics. So what are people buying? Their average transaction value, purchase frequency, lifetime value, average items, big list there. How do customers engage outside of transactions? So the more behavioral metrics, digital engagement, participation in your gamification strategy, program usage, how and where and what are customers redeeming on? Thinking about program measures, how many points have you issued? How many points have been burned? How many rewards have been issued? Then coming on to financial measures, and this is a big one. So what is your cost of your program? What is the profit contribution? What is your breakage and points liability? Really understanding that in quite some significant detail. I can't stress enough how important that is. Make sure you know your numbers and make sure you're bulletproof. And I say that because quite often loyalty programs are one of the first victims of a cost-saving initiatives, often because senior stakeholders don't necessarily understand them because they're pretty complicated, right?
Yeah.
So be rock solid that you can prove the impact of the investment that you're making in your program. One lesson I've learned here, and top tip, be best buddies with your finance director, get them in at the ground level so they totally understand your strategy, what you're doing, what the benefits are of the activity that you're undertaking. Two things. Number one, they can really help you define the detailed metrics. And secondly, they'll definitely back you up with senior stakeholders when it matters. So get them on your side 100%. Some of the things we track at Sainsbury's in terms of finances, clearly ROI I've mentioned, but also looking at individual proposition, profitability, and also at a campaign level. We also look at the distribution of our spend by those different segments, as Julie was saying. So how much are you investing in your top segments? How much are you investing that might be money going down the drain? So really understanding the distribution of the dividend that you're giving back to your customers as part of loyalty. We also look at campaign level performance, as Julie mentioned, and here key to success there is making sure you've got a really good, strong test framework so that you understand performance and you can continually refine targeting and offers. And of course, all of this reporting needs someone to do it. So the other piece of advice I'd give on this one is make sure you've got a good, dedicated loyalty analytics team to be all over the numbers. At Sainsbury's, we talk about the power of two. So that's the loyalty team and analytics really joined at the hip. If you add finance to that mix and maybe product too, it's a pretty unbreakable team when it comes to loyalty. Now, that list could go on and on, but the important thing is ensure that those measures really roll up to your KPIs that in turn ladder up to your strategy. And then the third lens of measurement that complements those inside-out measures is the outside-in measures. So no good if we think our program's good and performing well for the business if the customers think it sucks. So really absolutely crucial that you're listening to your customers as much as you can at the same time as watching the performance of your points. We take time to, get under the skin of how customers feel about our brand and our program. Lots of ways to do that. I'm sure you've got a lot of these in your kit bag already. NPS, it's a good complementary measure alongside a number of other things. Brand affinity and warmth, CSAT, loads of other core brand metrics that you can think about there. I generally find that those outside-in measures are particularly important for brands with maybe less frequent or higher consideration products, or for programs that rely on experiences, perks, benefits a little bit more. And that's because in those cases, traditional ROI of points and discounts issuance is probably less tangible to track. So you need something solid to be able to anchor success on. Regardless, I think for any brand, those kind of outside-in metrics will help you really understand how your program's doing against the more emotional measures, but help you optimize messaging against your strategy. Right, apologies, I did say there's a lot to go at. The important thing to remember here is continually come back to your strategy, review your performance, create the right narrative to prevent rogue metrics being misinterpreted, and importantly, act on the data you've collected to make improvements across your plan. So, key takeaways from me: have a clear strategy, map your performance metrics against the things that are important, and make sure people know about it. Don't stand still. Ensure your metrics have got proper utility for you to action against. So measure it, review it, optimize, repeat, keep on moving. Create a single truth. Again, really important, because misinterpretation of metrics can be a very, very negative pull on your strategy and the ambitions that you've got for your program. And stand by your plan, build out that compelling story about why what you're doing is the right thing in the business, what impact it's making, and how you can drive customer loyalty forward, not just for today, tomorrow, but for the long term. Yeah. So that's it from me. I hope that was useful. We're going to move on to our next speaker, unless there are any burning questions right now.
We have a burning question.
A burning question. Awesome. Go for it.
Lisa.
Yeah, I would love to ask you a question, Alex. That was so helpful. Thank you. And I love the advice about making besties with your finance director. I wrote that one down in my book.
Yeah.
One of the things you touched on quite early in your presentation was the emotional connections. And I just wondered whether you could elaborate on that a little bit more. That's something that I'm planning to touch on as well, but I was just interested in some of the methods that you might use to achieve that.
Yeah, so those emotional connections in particular are more long-term measures, aren't they? So it's kind of understanding how customers are feeling about the program. So from my perspective, at Sainsbury's in particular at the moment, value is massively important, how customers feel about the Sainsbury's brand. It's a really competitive market. So we're measuring value perception, warmth to the brand, and engagement, because it is quite a transactional business that we're in. So any step up that we can make in understanding the emotional connection that we have with customers is imperative. And how do we differentiate our brand against, the very big mix of big grocery retailers in the UK? Try and set ourselves aside from just pure transactional activity. So I mentioned NPS, so Net Promoter Score. That's definitely in the mix, but I find it's a really tricky one to do anything with in reality, because it moves so slowly, and you've got to do something relatively drastic to impact that at a program level. I think where some of those other metrics are super useful is if you apply them to specific areas of your program. So Julie talked about the contact center as an example. So really honing in on particular aspects of your business and understanding how that's impacting the relationship that you have with customers on a one-to-one basis. Hopefully that takes you up nicely, Lisa.
Alex, can I just ask a question? So do you actually do surveys to your customers, or do you...
Yeah. So actually, if you've got a loyalty program, use it to your advantage. So we've got a huge panel as part of Nectar, but we are regularly polling every single week to understand their experience week on week with the brand. How do they, what do they think across a number of different brand metrics? And then we'll do focus groups and research groups every single month. So we're, customer closeness is one of our corporate kind of mantras. We're encouraged not only to kind of measure customer loyalty through formal aspects, but to get out there in store. So one of my personal KPIs as an employee of Sainsbury's is to spend at least one day a month in store, just talking to colleagues and also to customers to understand how they're doing and probe them on an individual basis.
That's interesting.
Can I just add to that, Oz? Because one of the challenges that we've experienced and had to overcome is when people talk about NPS, how do you make it actionable? And then there's episodal NPS, which is at a moment in time, and then there's strategic NPS.
Yeah,
we find that episodal NPS is a key flag in our strategies, and it's more a key flag about what we might actually put on hold. So if they're queued for a communication, but they've actually just had a poor experience of some form, cross-selling them in the next week is not going to be healthy. So we actually use episodal NPS as a measure to what we potentially might actually change or put a suppression in campaigns that are queued to go, and change that with a service type of priority message. So that's actually really powerful, but the trick is actually getting episodal NPS that's tagged back to a customer that you can use.
Yeah,
that's very.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges, isn't it, Julie, just to have a really joined up data set that pulls together all of the various strands of data. So,
that's right.
Like most organizations with a loyalty program and, big analytics team, we're flooded with data, which is both a blessing and a curse. The biggest challenge that I have is actually joining all of that up to make it actionable. So taking those signals from the contact center, even in store,
That's right.
Surveys off the back of someone's grocery online delivery, and taking that signal and using it either to suppress something or to action against.
Cool. All right. We're on to Lisa. Segue for you, Lisa.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me today. Fascinating topic, and I'm loving hearing some of the themes that are coming out already. I thought it'd be an interesting place to start, if I can maybe flip to the next slide, to touch on a couple of questions that I get asked a lot. One of those questions is, why do you personalize at all? Like, why bother? And also, when do you personalize? When will we be personalized? You could argue the minute you're doing an email that says "Dear Aussie," you're personalized, but it's probably not really what people mean. So amongst a couple of other things there, that's where I'll start today. So I wanted to share a little story about when I first started my job at Bupa. So my managing director sat me down and he said, we're actually performing pretty well as a business, Lisa. We understand healthcare, and we're managing our books successfully. However, not all of our customers agree with us. So our NPS scores don't actually reflect that business success. So unless we do something about that, it's a pretty short-lived strategy, isn't it? But please go fix that for me. And there's obviously a number of strategies that need to be implemented to address a problem like that. But one of the core strategies that Bupa's chosen to back is personalisation. Actually getting to know our customers at a personal and more emotional level, so that we can really understand them and address some of their pain points, as well as align, I guess, some of our business success metrics to theirs. So we're looking really for a shift in how we maintain our relationships with our customers from more of a transactional one to more of an emotional one. And I guess in an industry like healthcare, there's no real excuse not to have a emotional connection with your customers, because it is an emotional topic, right? So the other thing, I guess, just to call out, just from a measurement perspective, it's that shift means that we're really starting to focus on our customer lifetime value, not what's happening in quarter one, what's happening in quarter two, what's happening in quarter three. And the other thing is actually starting to look at how can our customers start to drive advocacy on our behalf. And some of those things, I guess, have already started to come out in your presentation, Alex. If I start to think about a loyalty program, My business is at the very beginning of that journey, and I know, Aussie, you played a key role in helping us to set that up. And if you look at why we wanted to actually set up a loyalty program at all, a lot of our customers were telling us, we're kind of rusted on, but only because it's a topic we can't really be bothered thinking about very much, versus like I'm invested, in this brand. And they're telling us that they want to be rewarded and recognised in more meaningful ways. Problem is, that means something different to everybody. So how I might like to be rewarded might be different to Alex, might be different to Aussie. So that's kind of, I guess, the core problem that we've identified. We've launched the program pretty quickly, and honestly, we don't know everything yet. And so I guess the strategy that we've taken is to get in market and have something to say and learn along the way. So ideally, we would know by now all that we need to know in terms of which rewards are the most important to put in front of people. What are those moments of truth in terms of actually recognising, my tenure, my share of wallet, like whatever the measurement may be. But we don't know everything. So what we have developed, however, is a fairly robust test and learn strategy. So we've launched with a number of surprise and delight opportunities that we hope will speak to different portions of our base. And what we're doing is measuring the outcomes of those opportunities in detail. And then in parallel, we are absolutely deep diving into further exploratory analysis as well. One of the other things I get asked about a lot is whether or not you can over-personalise. And I would say, hell yes. And I think we all probably intuitively know that, particularly in the health space, can be quite sensitive. So the part of the business that I'm employed by is the insurance arm. And but for a customer outside of the business, we're just a healthcare company. And so in order to get the right to play and have conversations about your health, there's an element of trust, I guess, that needs to be developed there. So like some of the cringe things, like you can just start to imagine, can't you? Imagine if you're walking out of a doctor's surgery today and I was like, how was your pap smear? It's probably not, it's probably getting a bit creepy at that point. So there is a balance, I guess, in trying to find the right conversation in terms of just because you can say it, should you say it? And there is obviously test and learn around that as well. But I think the other thing is looking at where you are starting to over-personalise to the point where it's outweighing the value exchange. And one of the ways that we've chosen to overcome that is by investing, in automation technology. And I've had a cold recently, excuse me. Successfully losing my voice. So that's one of the ways that we've enabled our scalability and our response capability is to invest in some fairly significant technology uplift. So in terms of where to start, I think it's really important to be clear on what problem you're trying to solve, which we touched on at the start. And for different organizations, you'll be at different parts of the journey, but I guess like I touched on at the start, we're right at the beginning. And one of the decisions that we had to make up front is whether we wanted to go for breadth or depth. So what I've seen in different organizations, people get kind of tripped up by not making that deliberate decision. So what I mean by that is making deliberate decisions about, am I going to look at personalizing a whole bunch of experiences in, let's say, one channel? Let's say we want to pick on the app. Or am I going to start to invest on a couple of key experiences at an omni-channel level? And so just making some really key deliberate decisions around those kinds of dimensions means that you can rally and guide a larger group of people around a key cause. And I think also just starting to understand at least how that ecosystem works together. So for us, we wanted to bring a lot of the more complicated health-based conversations into our assisted channels. But guess what? They're full. And they're full for different reasons. One, because I think COVID has accelerated people's interest in their own healthcare. COVID has also made it really difficult to get staff in contact centres and the like. And particularly, I don't know, this is the same for you, Alex, but certainly in Australia, where we rely a lot on immigration to our population, that's been really tricky for us to navigate around. So we've made a really deliberate decision to start our personalisation and rewards journey in the digital channels. We want to be able to automate a lot of the transactional type exchanges so that we can make room for those value-add conversations in those assisted channels. So I guess that kind of brings me to my next point, which is, when do you start to think you're becoming truly personalised? And in my experience, there's probably a couple of key behaviours that I typically see that indicate to me that a business is starting to really rally around customer centricity. And so this is that real move away from being a product-led organisation to being a customer-led organisation. So are we actually planning at a product level, or are you actually planning at a customer level? How does your structure look? So, and when you're sitting in meetings, are you sitting in silos and talking about your different business units, or are you talking about the customer and how you build better products to rally around that customer base? So there are a couple of key things, and also just how you report. So I really liked, Alex, you're talking about your inside out metrics. So I think it's dangerous to move away from reporting on how your successful product lines are performing, but complement that with what does that mean from a customer perspective? So what does my share of wallet start to look like? What does my household makeup start to look like? Who are the influencers in my relationships that are making decisions about whether or not I purchase a particular product? So there's some of the things I think start to fall out. Also, just in terms of I guess what we start to measure, the frequency in which your customers are, I hasten to use the word tolerate, but enjoying your business exchange. So my business, we had the global director of Uber come and speak to us last week, and the one thing that she just kept ramming home was, you have to have reasons for people to come to you. And so not every exchange needs to land in a conversion. And so Komo Bank talk about this a lot as well. So their whole bank is on an app. But it doesn't mean that every time someone comes to the app, let's say that they're trying to do something with their account or make a purchase. They're trying to generate content to drive customers to that location so that when they get there, there are opportunities to engage and opportunities to build a relationship. And simple things might be, for example, identifying where you're eligible for, say, a government kickback on something. So they're not necessarily getting something out of that exchange, but they're using that opportunity to build a relationship with you so that in the future that trust is developed and it becomes an obvious place to go and look for information.
Yeah. The
other thing that we spend a lot of time talking about in our business is how can we listen better rather than push. So that's why I've included on that slide there the push, listen, push, and the 5-to-1 rule. So what I mean by that is, are you constantly giving information to your customers, or are you also listening to what they're saying? So, for example, in my previous business, which was a gas and electricity business, one of the things we used to do was a welcome call. And on that welcome call, we stripped back all of the cross-sell, all of the, hey, we've got a loyalty program, everything from the start of that exchange, and just started to simply ask people how they are, if there's anything else we can help them with today. But lo and behold, they started to say things like, oh, actually, I own a business. Could you help me with that? Oh, actually, I was thinking of moving to more renewable energy options. Could you help me with that? And by almost shutting up and listening and creating opportunities to capture that information, get that information to the right decision makers in the business, we were able to start to reflect some of that feedback in our personalisation opportunities, in the way that we reward our customers, and to have more meaningful conversations. Awesome. And then the 5-to-1 rule is the other one we spend a lot of time talking about. And you hear a lot about this in change management programs, and the number of I guess, negative exchanges that a customer can typically tolerate compared with a positive exchange. And it's a 5-to-1 ratio, like typically. So, and I think a lot of people are surprised by that. And if you sit back and you think about, am I actually delivering 5 amazing conversations or interesting or exciting conversations for every sales message I want to push, or for every negative apology that I need to make? That can be a confronting statistics, is something that's interesting to think about.
Okay.
So I've probably rambled on quite a bit. I probably won't cover up a lot of the the measurement statistics. I think it's a lot similar to what you've already heard about today. But if I could talk on my key takeaways, it's really around making sure that you're rewarding the right customers and the right behaviours. And you can only do that by really getting to know your base. The other thing I would touch on is personalize to stand out. Don't do it just for the sake of it. You want, like, so in my business, a lot of the healthcare companies are really focused on value. Cost of living is something that's really top of mind for people at the moment, but everyone's addressing that. And so it becomes almost a hygiene. And then you need to think about, like, on top of that, what are the opportunities for you to stand apart? And then test and learn over and over, and avoid analysis paralysis. And then lastly, look for opportunities to build in frameworks and automation so that you can scale your customer experiences.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. This is a nice segue into Shirley. Winning at the point of purchase. So what does winning at the point of purchase mean, and how can this impact a loyalty program? Over to you, Shirley.
Thank you, Aussie, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you all about this very topic that I'm very passionate about. And having worked many years within the UK, Australia, and also global around winning at the point of purchase, I could also, like the other speakers, spend all day talking about this, but I will try my best to whittle it down as much as I can. So firstly, what does the point winning at the point of purchase mean? Well, just to get ourselves into the headspace on the specific area that we're talking about here is point of purchase, most commonly called the last moment of truth, is basically just before a shopper or when a shopper is actually about to make that final transaction. And it's a really pivotal point of the customer journey, as it could mean a customer choosing your brand or someone else's. And what it means by winning within this moment is basically it's a triple win. Firstly, the retailer, so to nail the transaction for them and make sure that and also potentially getting shoppers to spend a bit more, either through suggestive sell, cross-selling or upselling. The shopper winning from having a delightful experience, and also the seamless buying experience, either offline or online, and also the brand enhancing their brand scores at this point in time as well. And for any initiative to be sustainable, you really have to have these three players winning at the same time. So in terms of when I was thinking about this, in terms of how to win in this moment and also get it right for our shoppers, I was thinking about not going into the nitty-gritties of the classic 5 Ps, and also not talking about execution, which are all really important, but actually what I wanted to focus really on, in my experience, having worked in big companies like Unilever, Nestle, McDonald's, and across the UK, Australia, and global, that are often areas that are not done the best by these businesses, to be honest, and more of an holistic point of view of opportunities for businesses to really sharpen. So how to win at this moment? Well, firstly, have a robust shopper marketing strategy and have it set right up front. So every business, I believe, that sells anything should have some sort of shopper marketing strategy, because often I see that some businesses just don't even have it. And also shopper marketing strategy should be grounded by shopper insights. This then translates to how we engage with shoppers in areas and also in areas where we want them to take notice, and also The shopper's marketing strategy should be integrated within the overall marketing strategy and thought through at the same time as that, and ideally dovetail from a category strategy as well. So it's not seen as an afterthought at the execution phase, which I also often see it just kind of tagged on. And, the other thing on top of that is, don't think it as an purely executional. Really, it should be embedded into the strategy right from the beginning. So it informs things like the creative direction, content, and also potentially on which channels you want to communicate as well. The second thing I think that's really, really important is that communication has to be relevant at the moment of truth. So shoppers are most often, or they're not the same as a consumer. So think pet food, think baby food, think mum buying for the family. So it's a different type of language that you have to use when you're talking to a shopper. Be it digital or in-store experience, it's important that the initiatives that you've laid out through these type of programs such as loyalty is communicated in the most relevant way to shoppers at that point when they're about to buy, because often marketeers they have a lot to say and they're tempted to communicate a lot at that point, but actually most of the time shoppers are either in a busy supermarket with potentially kids in tow, or they're hungry, they just want to order their food, they just want a really easy and quick experience, and making sure that we give them that by not communicating too much and also communicating the right thing. And especially also now that price is such a sensitive topic because of things like inflation, but just to remember that that's not just the only lever to pull. There's other levers like behavioral economics levers like badging, limited time only, 5-star ratings, all these to really nudge shoppers at the point of purchase, because really a lot of the time shoppers just want that shortcut to make that final decision. And also my suggestion is really to get that message right, my advice is really to lean into experts in the shopper marketing field, because they have, say, a different skill set to paid media. Thirdly, don't work in silos, think omni-channel. I think some of the other speakers mentioned things like omni-channel as well, and making sure that we talk to shoppers in a way that really we understand that they're actually looking at all these different things offline, online, between the lines, everywhere. It's no longer a linear path anymore, so we need to make sure that everything is looked at from an entire ecosystem point of view, and everything kind of connects. Things like loyalty programs, personalization needs to be integrated at the point of purchase in the right way, to make sure that the overall experience is given in an ideal situation, in an ideal way. This means that teams really have to work together internally, either in scrums or in project teams, really to make sure that there is that connection across the board. And that might require some cultural shift from your business, or structural shifts depending on where your organization is in terms of that connection. And also lastly, and really important and tying into today's topics, analytics and metrics. So I think Alex mentioned, KPIs. So you would have those right at the onset. So I don't want to repeat too much of what previous speakers have talked about, but really making sure that that measurement is happening not just after a campaign, or it's happening like within the campaign as well, and that constant ebb and flow of data to refine execution. And it's so much easier now with digital that you can actually refine executions and make things go live really quickly, and actually understand feedback quite quickly. So make sure we take advantage of this, the digital tools that we have. And then obviously at the end, or whatever the decision in terms of the timeline is, to measure it and measure the activity and make sure that, that information is used for future activities, because, often people change roles and kind of forget what was done last year, or is not there for what was done last year. So we need to make sure that we have that feedback loop always as well. And there's very many measures out there that also Alex talked about in terms of, you know, all these. There's lots and lots of measures, you know, for point of purchases like marketing mix models, A/B testing, quant data. But I think what's really important is to understand, you know, right at the onset of what data do you actually have access to right at the beginning to be able to measure if you've done a good job or not, and make sure that that data is reliable. And also tech stack is a big thing as well, to make sure that actually do you have the tech stack there to be able to measure things right from a customer clicking onto a splash page right through to purchase. Do you have that type of measurement and that technology to measure right from the word go? Typical metrics that you would use at the point of purchase would be things like conversion or brand scores, and also customer experience. But I think the most important thing here, and I think one of the other speakers also mentioned, is accountability, and making sure that there is a really strong team that actually is accountable for actually looking back or analyzing at that point in time, so that that basically the analytics is done, because a lot of the time is this, you know, we have so much data now, but sometimes in some organization that mind shift hasn't happened in terms of using data to make decisions and having that growth mindset. So I think that's a really important journey that people need to go on to make sure that they do use data in the best way that they can, and actually have access to it, and also have that omni-channel outlook as well. So lastly, just wanted to touch on the last kind of question that Aussie posed to me, is how does winning at point of purchase work together with loyalty programs? Well, loyalty programs, obviously you can use them to really seal the deal at the point of purchase, if you show customers, you know, what points you can earn and what you can burn. And it depends on your organization and how it's organized, but, you know, obviously collaboration, working with the shopper experts in the business as well as the loyalty experts, to make sure that you have that joined up approach, and that your communication at the point of purchase about loyalty is the right one. So for example, you know, at the point of purchase, I wouldn't recommend that you communicate about a loyalty programs to drive awareness, because actually that distracts the customer from actually making that final transaction. So things like that the shopper team or shopper insights team will be able to kind of inform you to make the best decision in terms of communicating with your customer. So with that, if you just go to the last slide. Sorry, I'm a little bit over in time. So just the three key takeaways. Winning at the point of purchase means triple win: retailer, brand, and the shopper. Get the communication right at the shopper, on the shopper level, not to a customer. They're different people, they're potentially different, and use metrics and analytics to really refine execution. And it has to be collaborative effort across the whole business, and make sure that, you know, you really work as a team to basically get the right message at the right time to the shoppers.
Awesome. Thank you. So if you can't stick around, we have you can always book a demo, so you can scan that code there, and we'll be taking questions. So if there's any questions, feel free to direct them to our lovely guests. I have a question, actually, Shirley. With any kind of activity that happens in store, is there some kind of forecasting that is required?
Yes, in short, I think that's wise to at least, even if you haven't done the activity before, you pick a kind of similar activity that you've done previously to understand what type of impact you might have, which then obviously impacts especially if it's in store, might impact the stock that you bring in, or the impact that you'll have with customers. So yeah, I think it's wise to actually understand and forecast before you do any activity.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone else? For anyone else? No.
Hi everyone. I have a question myself, but I've also been texting a question as well from someone who had to leave. But I think I'll ask Francis's question after sort of mine. And I think I think this is potentially a selfish one for myself and Komo, and now we've got all the expert call. Of course, I'm going to make the most of it. So obviously, we've been taking a pretty deep look into loyalty over the past few months, and what we have found is that a lot of loyalty programs are missing what we feel is a key function, and that's what we're calling sort of true engagement. So that could be, and we've touched on it a couple of times throughout this session, is it's around value adding, personalized content, might be interactive content, gamification, competitions, etc., which all can be linked to rewards, but all about connecting and amplifying people's passion points, adding true value for the customer, and building that trust and relationship. So I'd really love to hear from all of you, some of you, one of you, on your thoughts on what role that, what we're calling true engagement, fits into loyalty programs. And do you, I guess, think that maybe either your own or others could be lacking or could be improved into that true engagement side of things?
I can pick that one up first. So within my program Nectar, a lot of the activity that we undertake with customers is single-mindedly to drive sales. However, what we also try to do is blend that more transactional set of activity with some more engaging activity. So within the Nectar app, we've got all sorts of little fun, sticky mechanics that help us just to engage with customers in between the big spikes of activity. So we regularly undertake data playbacks. So once a year, we tell customers what their top products across the year have been, and whether you've been the top buyer of Toblerone in the Tunbridge Wells Sainsbury's, which gets really great engagement and shares on social media. We also do little gamification pieces of activity to drive alternative types of behaviour. So the Sainsbury's brand promise is helping everyone eat better. So a couple of times a year we do what we call the Great Big Fruit and Veg Challenge, which is challenging customers to fill up their baskets with more fresh produce, so fruit and veg, as the name suggests, and we reward them as part of the loyalty program for doing so. So you get rewarded for putting a red pepper or some tomatoes in your shopping basket, or buying more fresh veg than you would normally. So actually mixing those little engaging mechanics with the more here's an offer to get a discount on a particular product or some points on a particular product is really crucial for that ongoing engagement with the program, and therefore you can use that as the anchor to drive the kind of more transactional behavior that you want from customers.
Funny, I got an email from Qantas yesterday saying that I was in the top 10 flyers as far as miles achieved over the last 3 months or 6 months or something like that. And to me, that was like, oh, yeah, just like a little, oh. And my wife's sitting there going, yeah, it's probably not something to be proud of. Maybe you should stay home for longer. But no, I love it. And I think, Lisa, you said something along the lines of not every touch point needs to be lead to a direct sale, which I think is sort of in line with what
I love your question, because you'd think in a business like or a industry like health, that it would be easy, right? It feels win-win. It's good for our book if people claim less, that means they're healthier. It's good for them if they're healthier. But interestingly, Australians, if you look at the globe and how people tend to respond to their health, we're shit. We tend to get to age 65, drop off a cliff and go, oh, what happened? All of a sudden I'm unhealthy. If you look at other countries, typically across the board, people are better at proactively managing their health. And so one of the things we're really focused on is how can we get that message across? I think COVID's probably helped. It's helped to give that a bit of a kickstart and a bit of focus. So it's helped, pivot the attention a little bit more to this conversation. But I mean, I'm just back from a study tour in the States, and talk about the need to reward the right behavior in the area of health. Like, you can imagine if you're somebody that suffers from, say, a chronic disease, and the system over there is a lot more complicated, population's bigger, blah, blah, blah. But every time I go to the doctor, I get a new script, and then I've got a claim, and then there's a reason why, you know, you're not going to make, you know, the payment. And like, can you imagine your whole life with living with some chronic illness, which doesn't have to be, unmanageable, like diabetes, for example, but like just exhausting. And so actually giving, you know, our customers a bit of a boost to say, you know, you're doing the right thing. And then when they fall off the wagon and maybe they are exhausted and they're not going to appointments, actually starting to reach out and say, you know, being more of a coach in that area, and how can we play a role to help you manage your health for you as much as for us, but for the benefit of yourself. And I think you can start with really small things. Like I was reading the draft of an email the other day, and I love, Shirley, that you touched on the need for technology, and this is, you know, my space, so I love that you mentioned that. But you can get very lost in the nuts and bolts and how things work and actually forget to show up in the right way for your customers. So the email was something like, we can see you're going to hospital, here's how you can claim, would you like to like, it was so mechanical. And I'm like, can't we just send them like a virtual bunch of flowers and say, hope you're feeling better? And maybe start there. And so it's kind of building more of that two-way exchange and like being a bit human about, you know, how to go about building that relationship from my perspective.
That's huge. I love the bunch of flowers thing. And from our perspective, it's send them while they're waiting in the waiting room, send them a quick game to play.
Something like
fun
that,
while they're waiting to take their mind off
exactly.
what's coming next.
I might steal that game idea. I like that.
I might supply you with that game.
Can I ask you a question, Alex? You know how you mentioned that you're bringing in some of the gamified experiences to the shopping mission. When do you plan that? Is that part of your planning cycle at the beginning of the quarter, or have you thought out that year and said we're going to do this? At what point do you plan that would be an activity, or is it more tactical?
We've got a number of set plays, so kind of things that we do within the marketing calendar that are pretty regular. And then sometimes we're just thinking about them as quite tactical plays. To be honest with you, Oz, one of the things we're working on is how do we create that as a reusable feature within our app. So we have a more of a build as opposed to buy strategy, much to my wailing of gnashing of teeth with my friends in product. I would much rather kind of buy a product like yours and have it plugged into the app so I can kind of deploy straight from my team's desktop, as opposed to waiting for the tech team to build something fresh every time. We're getting better, but it does hamper us in our kind of responsiveness and our ability to react to what customers are doing in the moment. So it tends to be a bit set play, and we've got a few levers that we can pull tactically, but to have a toy box of games and little features that we could deploy at will would be my dream.
I think the other thing I'd say there, Joel, is you see this trend everywhere. You know, a lot of people really pride themselves on they acquired 500,000 new customers this year. It was fantastic acquisition numbers. And typically when you look at the churn out of new customers, it's much, much higher than obviously more deeply engaged customers. And a lot of people have a strategy of, you know, onboarding in first 100 days is a fairly typical thing. We tend to look at the first year with the brand, and that's actually a much more focused level on engagement, awareness, not just all about driving the next shop or the next transaction. And I think peppering in things that are actually about driving awareness and education and engagement in the first year, because churn is typically 15-20% higher in the new customers churning out the following year, which has a massive impact on the business case, because, you know, if you're getting 500,000, it's great, but then the following year only, you know, 60% of those stay with you, or whatever the number is. So I think there is important. I think the other part there is depending on the business. So, you know, if retail's different because it's fast, it's moving, and there's always something to try and have a conversation about. But if you are a telco and you've actually just bought a phone or whatever it's going to be, you know, your next transaction is some ways away. So how do you utilize these types of things to keep engagement up with a relevant conversation and not always feeling like it's a sell. So I think there's a couple of parts there. And the third one, which I think is interesting that none of us have really talked about today, but if you take, say, a banking client, you're going to have customers in your life cycle that have previously been really high value. They've had mortgages, credit cards, whatever, term deposits, whatever they've had, but they're now, 65 plus, and they're no longer high value to the bank because they actually now own their own houses and what have you, but they've previously been a very high value and loyal customer to you. The problem is you can't afford to actually give away offers, etc., to them as much because you're not going to make money from those transactions. But our focus in those is often creating a group that we know they were previously high value and they're very high tenure. And the focus there is more about engagement and recognition of the call center as an example of being high value, because we can't really sell them anymore. And they're not, even if we try and do an offer, we won't make money from it, but they are our previous high value and they have a very high intergenerational opportunity with their families and their kids about recommending the bank as an example.
Advocacy, Julie, MPS and advocacy would play a role there for those customers.
Well, yeah, but you can't afford to give away too much to those customers because they're not going to make you any more money, but they are still very important to be recognised. So I think those sorts of engagement type activities and what have you are powerful use cases there.
I fill the gaps. Yeah, I mean, it feels like a lot of it all comes down to building trust, building relationships, and if you can, and adding value. And if you can do those three things, then the commercial returns that you're looking for will come. It's like build it and they will come type situation. But you build that trust, the relationship, and keep adding value and doing that in a personalized way, then that's the mecca, I guess.
Yeah, and I think then actually proving that, that whatever it might be, a message or a cross-sell message coupled with an engagement message actually drives more value than just doing a cross-sell and a frequency without an engagement piece, and being able to track that to actually demonstrate that's incrementally better anyway.
I do have this one question from Francis. So his question was, how do we believe personalisation connects into customers' passions and brand sponsorship deals? So Francis, being from Havas Media, lots in sports sponsorship, etc. He's the Chief Marketing and Content Officer there. So I can understand where his question is coming from. But anyone want to touch on any, I guess, history and brand sponsorships and loyalty?
Well,
I mean, I can talk.
Yeah,
you go.
There you go.
Lisa can talk to Paralympics.
Yeah, we've just started sponsoring the Carlton Football Club, and I think, that was a fairly easy decision. You live in Melbourne, you sponsor an AFL team. You've won kind of half the population, really. But no, I think actually, Ozzy, you've touched on the Paralympics, and I mean, I guess that's a really good example. But one of the things we're spending a lot of time talking about as a business at the moment is just kind of that whole social responsibility. And so, we want to be able to pick things where we're demonstrating that we actually care, because it's in our ethos, right? Particularly being a healthcare company. And whether or not people are interested in that particular cause is almost irrelevant, because we see evidence to say that people are interested in engaging with a brand because they have, good morality, a good moral compass, basically. I think there's a really good example of, if you look at people's Twitter handles and the different logos that they use, I think as a country, we really over-index in environmental. And so just starting to pick up on what different interest areas are and how do you then reflect that, not just in your sponsorship deals, but also in your partnerships in terms of who you choose to do business with. I think it's really critical.
Beautiful. Thank you. That was fantastic.
Jules,
I guess.
You want to add to that?
Look, I guess because, Ozzy, you could add just as much here. We've both worked in telcos where passion points was a huge part of the loyalty strategy.
Yeah, there too.
Yeah, so, both of us have worked in telcos where movies, music and sport were extreme components of the the loyalty strategy, and that was really tapping into passion points. I think where it becomes really interesting is if we take sport as an example, is people are, I mean, Lisa mentioned Carlton, people are extremely passionate about their sports, but what's interesting for the sport is, and for the brands and sponsorships, is a lot of people will sponsor a sporting event. What they want to get out of it is obviously trying to influence or drive awareness to the customers that are in that zone. Is how you can come up with a much more data-driven or data-led strategy where you're really understanding almost like the fan ID, the type of ways people are consuming their passion points, and then being able to come up with almost like a data exchange type of opportunity where you can intermingle, you know, who are the brand's customers and not the sporting customers, who are the sporting customers, not the brand customers. And I've worked on a few big plays there before, and they're extremely powerful. Obviously, it's all got to be in a privacy compliant way, but there is definitely ways to bring the communities together to drive much better commercial outcomes from their sponsorships, because a lot of the sponsorships, people don't necessarily have a brand awareness issue. What they really want to do is try and build a relationship with those customers, but whoever the customer is signed up to is owned by that group, but they want to try and influence. So if you take a lot of telcos and media companies, they spend all this money on digital rights deals and all these sorts of areas that they build, but quite often the value is right in with the data and working out what the data-led strategy is to support that. But I've seen it happen several times, and it's extremely powerful. It's complicated though, because there's lots of stakeholders involved with that. But I think it's extremely powerful.
I think just just one last thing in terms of because obviously McDonald's sponsors FIFA as well. So I think it's going back to Julie's point about negotiating and making sure that you really because obviously FIFA is extremely expensive, being able to negotiate financially what you can get off it, and the stream of how you can basically milk the profit from it. So we did a lot of delivery messages was where we wanted to push with sponsorship. So it's about, do you have a really strong hook with linking yourself with that sponsorship as well?
Yeah, and I think the win-win there is if the nucleus of the strategy is fan engagement,
correct,
that has a broader outcome, and fan engagement benefits multi-stakeholders. So it's actually then putting that, it's not necessarily about who the sponsor is or who's the owner of the rights or the sporting content. It's actually what's the fan engagement we can co-create together, and what's the better together strategy that's commercially viable between that.
It comes back to the same thing that we were just saying before. It's if you put the fan first, then everyone else will benefit from it. And Shirley, we've done a number of different campaigns with Maccas, as we call it here in Australia.
Yes.
Through Fox Sports and their sponsorship of or your sponsorship of Cricket Australia. And another one which comes to mind is, and they've just signed a new multi-year renewal with us, is QBE, and they're not necessarily a brand that you'd want to or think about engaging with at a sports game. They sponsor the Sydney Swans and the Sydney Swifts, but they utilise the Komo platform to amplify their messaging in stadium, connect with the fans about the Swans, the Swifts. But it's a big data play, right? So they're getting a good percentage of the fans in stadium engaging with the brand. The brand recall rates are going to be higher. Brand affinity is going to be better. They're getting first-party data. They're enriching it with zero-party data all through a 1 or 2 minute halftime activation, for example. So I think that's a big role with our platform and gamification in general, is how do you connect with people's passions when you wouldn't necessarily have the ability to do that through a brand like a QBE.
Cool.
Yeah, I guess we can let ladies go to bed, and thank you very much. But if anyone wants to stick around, I'm going to run a quick little platform demo. This will be recorded, so we can always, if you do need to go for whatever reason and you're still on the call, obviously you can book in some time to have a one-on-one. You can watch the recording later. So lots of different options there, so don't feel the need to hang around. But thank you, ladies, from me, and it's been fantastic having you join the Komo team. really, I guess the Komo platform, marketing technology platform, designed to make it super easy, fast and effective to create these really interactive, engaging experiences. We say own the moments with Komo, and basically meaning that there are hundreds of moments every day, like the point of purchase, as an example we've been discussing, when you can really own that moment and drive value for not only the customer, and I think who said it, Shirley, the triple win, the retailer, the brand, and the shopper. So at that point of purchase, so how can we, using gamification, interactive content, etc., enhance the experience for all involved? And the power of the platform, it makes it easy to do that. And we're building into the Komo platform. We've got the best of the best as far as gamification, competitions, promotions are concerned, and we're building in things like badges and other key sort of loyalty features into the platform now as well. So think about loyalty in a box with the power of gamification behind it. That's what you get with the Komo platform. So I guess the best place to start would be just to show you a couple of different, live examples of customers using Komo. So you can use Komo in lots of different ways, and Komo can live anywhere it needs to. So whether that's an engagement hub, like what you're seeing on screen now, where it's like a never-ending feed of interactive content, games, competitions, user-generated content, whatever you want to sort of add to this, videos, Spotify playlists, completely up to you. This is one that Woolworths has built with their agency, or MSC Saatchi Sport and Entertainment. They built this to enhance and amplify their sponsorship with Surfing Australia, as we were just touching on. And then they've just launched off the back of the success of that one, their Netball Australia hub, where it's all about healthy eating. So I think Alex could probably, this is sort of what Alex was talking to on the call at Sainsbury's around getting people, and in this case it's kids, to eat fresh, play fresh. So how do you do that in a fun, non-intrusive, gamified way when some, especially kids, don't necessarily care too much about eating healthy? So how do you make it fun? Is through things like this. So we've got all sorts of different, there's over 55 now plug and play games, competitions, rewards, etc., that you can build into the platform in literally minutes. And I can show you the back end in just a second. Then you've got use cases for things like shopping centres. So how do you engage with shoppers at home? How do you help drive them into centre, keep them in centre for longer? So this is a shopping centre hub. Now, most of the time, the hubs are built, it's a self-service platform. So we hand over it's a subscription-based service. We give you access to the back end, and you can create all this content yourself very, very easily. So either the agency does that or the brand direct. Other examples, Clubs New Zealand, they're actually partnered with Whatties in this case to bring to life a campaign for Whatties, and with our digital coupons technology as well, we can actually go from the engagement piece, whether that's in a stadium, through a broadcast, through a social media campaign, outdoor advertising. Getting people to the hub is easy because it can live anywhere. It can live within an app. So you've got the engagement, you've got the first party and zero party data collection. But then you've also got the ability to actually drive a sale as well. So driving people in store with a personalised reward generated through the Komo platform to redeem an item or get a discount or whatever it might be through Komo as well. And all of that obviously tracked and measurable. And I did write down another quote that's relevant to that is, Alex said it, you can't manage what you can't measure. So I love that one as well. It's a good one. Then you've got big sporting organisations that use the Komo platform. So Williams Formula One, this is their hub that they're updating on a regular basis. And again, the great thing about the platform being able to update regularly because it is so quick and easy. So keeping content fresh, continually adding value to your customers, your fans, your community, whatever it might be. So that's all managed in this back end. So this is just a demo hub here, but if you were to scan this QR code, if you've got your phone on you.
Oh, you want me to do it now?
Yeah, sure. Jump on it. Let's do it.
Okay.
I can quickly, there's a number of different games and competitions on here that you can sort of get involved with, and so there's a digital scratch and win, there's a match the pairs game, there's a Spotify playlist, and the top one is a live trivia game. So if I was to, that's the big screen integration, but let me just launch that hub. You can have gated content as well. Now everyone's going to know how old I am. That's and you know my birthday. So
Write it down.
So yeah, look, this could be one piece of content on an engagement hub, and you can pick up this card. So we call these cards. You can pick up that card within a couple of clicks, get the embed code, and embed that into another website, into a piece of content as well. So it can live anywhere. One card can live within an app. The whole hub can live within an app. Completely up to you. But if we were to go add content, it comes up with your list of your different games. From live trivia games where you can have millions of people playing live against each other at the same time to crown the world's biggest fan of something or the smartest in a certain topic, to live predictor games, which are great for any sort of live sport, live television, etc. Digital scratch and wins, watch to wins, all sorts of polling, quizzes, secret code games, pickers where you can pick your top 100s, pick your favorite team, memory challenges, and then all your media integrations. So from uploading a receipt to proof of purchase, to a photo frame or a way to generate user-generated content. So if we go back to the Surfing Australia hub, they've asked the families to upload photos of their kids at surf groms. And so they do that through this particular mechanic. So you can upload your content here, and then within a couple of clicks in the back end, they can add that to this carousel card. So the process of uploading, managing, and then adding back to the front end is like literally just 2 or 3 clicks. So it's very, very quick and easy. And then all your different social media embeds. So you really are building out a digital destination to really immerse the customer into that brand, that experience, the messaging that you're trying to achieve, and being able to update that on a regular basis, nice and easily. Sort of just ticks a few boxes around, the I guess cost efficiency of using gamification and competitions all the time. Now, if I was to show you, sorry, did you have a question?
Oh no, keep going.
I'll also show you just like very quickly, like I could literally create a scratch and win on this hub, and if we've got integrations with Canva, Unsplash, and Giphy as well. So if I was just to go, let's go this one here. I'll just do this super quick, and then we've got what does the scratch screen look like? So what? Let's go. This is the screen that you're going to be scratching. Oh, geez. Under pressure typing never does me well. All right, and then we go results. So this is what we're going to get to win. So if we just go, 4 people. Let's go this one here. So find, what are we doing here? Instant prize results content. No, that's not what we want. Yeah, so the success screen. Yep, that's fine. So find 4 people and win. And then if we wanted to go add an SMS communication. So if you've won, you're going to get a SMS saying you won this prize. And then if there's a digital coupon attached, which in this case we can choose the Macca's burger, we go, here's that digital coupon link, and we say update SMS, and we're out of there. Now the failure screen would potentially look like, we said we have to find 4 people, let's put in 3 people here. There we go. Then we say sorry, not today. Right. And then add SMS communication, come back and play another time and we're going to grab your first name. Okay, so now what we've got is we go to data capture and we can say we want unlimited plays. We're going to have a look at this form. We're just going to put a random image here. Now we haven't collected mobile, so that's going to stop us at the end. So we're going to need to, we can delete email. And we're going to add mobile number in here, make it a required field because we want to be able to send those SMS. And then I'm just going to double check that we've got a, we're going to do a 80% probability rate of you getting the success screen here. So that's automatically generated 20. Now you can have 20 different prizes, 20 different outcomes. It's completely up to you, but we won't do that for this. Now, if you get your phone ready, Michaela, on that hub, I'm going to push this live and we're going to see how good a job I did at setting this up in a couple of minutes. So that should be live on your phone. As you can see on mine, it's got load new content. On your phone, it should be there as well.
Yeah, beautiful.
And feel free to scratch away, enter your details. Yeah, now everyone's going to get my phone number as well. Happy days. Feel free to text me happy birthday. And we've just, there we go.
Beautiful.
4 people. And now I would receive my SMS from Leads Fest with my text that we've just created saying you've won this prize. So, and I've got my digital coupon to go to my closest McDonald's and pick up my free burger. So you'll have that as well, Michaela, if you go through and scratch, as long as you're not in the 20% that we set up.
Yes, no, I did get it.
So all of this,
it's a long way to go.
There's so many different games, competitions, etc., that you can build out, and augmenting these games, competitions, interactive content into existing loyalty programs, or building, I guess, a loyalty program around what we have. We're launching badges with Woolworths this Friday
oh, wow.
into their Netball
So what does that involve?
So that will be, so it's all based around this Netball Australia hub. So incentivising the kids to keep coming back, and or just netball fans in general to keep coming back across the season. So I think there's 6 badges across the season. There's 3 levels to each badge. So there's like a 3-star, 2-star, 1-star. If you get, for example, 10 out of 10 in a quiz, in the fruit and veg quiz, you get the 3-star badge. If you get over 5, you might get the 2, and over 1, you get the 1-star badge. And you need to come back every couple of weeks to earn the next badge, so that at the end of the season, you can, if you've collected all badges, you go into the draw to win the major prize, which I believe is for the kids to walk out onto the court with the teams for the grand final. Wow. And there's lots of different prizes and other competitions along the way as well, which can be linked to badges. So badges is just the start to obviously dipping our toes into loyalty, but there's lots of work going in the background around loyalty and points and rewards, etc. as well. Yeah. Right. So very, very, very quick overview of the platform, and probably the last thing I'll just say is that it's live analytics here. So this is us just playing now, unique entries, engagements, impressions, all of your engagement rates, virality. So if anyone's done any sharing, engagement time. So really powerful for brands when you can say that you can go back to brands, say you've had 1,200 people play at an average time of 1 minute 29 seconds. We've gathered this piece of data. We've enriched it with market research, which a lot of the games do as well, where we get a 99% response rate on market research questions, which again can add to that, that data set, from digital coupon redemptions to all the way down to all the other cards as well, have all got their own unique analytics, and all the data can be directly fed live back into any sort of other CRM, like a Salesforce or a Braze or something like that as well.
Is that automated? Like, is that with that link?
Yep. We can set up that automation so that any data captured, including anything from what they engage with and how, and answers to certain questions can all be linked straight back into CRM.
Awesome. And then your subscription model, is that based on engagements, like in terms of
Yeah,
cost?
so there's a couple of different options for the subscription. There's the always on, which is something like a good example would be a shopping centre or Woolworths, for example, where they've got a 12-month subscription and they want to be continually engaging and communicating with their customers, their community. So they have one URL or one engagement hub they keep sending people to. For agencies and other brands where they might want to run more promotional campaigns like a Goodman Fielder, one of our customers, for example, they'll run a praise campaign and they'll run a Wonder Bread campaign. They might run for 2 months each. They'll buy credits, Komo credits. So a Komo credit allows you to have an engagement hub live for 30 days. So 1 credit equals 30 days of an engagement hub. So you could buy, as an agency, say 6 credits and have those 6 credits sitting in your Komo bank, and then you can use those credits as you please over a 12-month period. So you might have one campaign which is you've got a brand say, yep, we want to do a 60-day campaign to use 2 credits, but the more credits you buy, the cheaper they get. So you buy the credits, you on-sell those for whatever you like, obviously. It becomes a revenue-driving opportunity, but also you manage the whole process as well. We're at our core, a technology company. We can offer professional services, but with agencies, it's normally a onboarding for your team. And then you guys just run it from start to finish, and we're just there for best practice and support when you need us.
Amazing. It's very useful.
Hope that helps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gary is there as well. Hope that helped, Gary. And we'll get that all packaged up in a recording as well, and we'll get that out to everybody.
Okay.
But thank you for taking the time and sticking around to run through that.
No, thank you for doing that.
No problems at all.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Well, no worries. Well, you have a fantastic day.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for joining.
I'll see you guys.